So in this video, I'm going to be talking about why your team still asks permission for everything and what to do about it, how to fix it. So if your Slack looks anything like this, so you got dozens of messages a day, they're all asking you permissions, then this video is for you, right? So you got questions like, hey, can I approve this refund? Or should I respond to this customer in this way? Or can I order more inventory? How much? Where? Is it okay to post this? What do you think about this social media post? And just like all sorts of stuff that, your employees will ask you just throughout the day, throughout the week. You get a bunch of questions, right? How do you do this? Do you like this? Hey, this happened. What do you think we should do? And so on and so forth, right? So you got a bunch of messages. They're all asking you what to do. Can I do this? Sometimes they're asking you for permission or just for opinion or just direction. Like, what should they do, right? So basically, then you spend hours and hours answering the questions instead of doing the actual CEO work, right? And instead of working on your business, you're answering the questions, which means even though you got workers, you're still stuck in the weeds. And the worst part is it will just keep happening over and over again. So you'll do it again tomorrow and the day after and the day after, and it's just like nothing changes, right? It's like housekeeping. Like you do the dishes and the next day, well, you got to do the dishes again. And then the next day, you got to do the dishes again. And it's just like an ongoing thing, and people get stuck with it and they think, well, this is just kind of how it is running a business. But it doesn't have to be this way. And in this video, we're going to solve this. Now, I know you probably tried to solve this. Everybody did. Maybe you told them, hey, just make a decision. Like, I trust you, use your judgment, but it doesn't really help. They still come back asking, if not for the exact same thing that you told them to use their judgment, then for the next thing, and then for the next thing, because there's always something a little bit different, or there's a new question and so on, right? Maybe you try hiring better people. You think, okay, I need people who are more experienced, more senior. You pay them a lot more, obviously. Guess what? They'll still ask you the same questions because they don't know your rules, right? Or they're just kind of like sitting there, like, they're executing the tasks, but they don't really step out of their lane and push things forward because they don't really know. And if they do, they would need to come to you and ask you, hey, do you think this is a good idea? Should we do it like this? So basically just answering stuff regardless, right? And maybe you just thought one day it will just stop, because people will be with me for a long time. They'll see how I do things. They'll learn. Eventually, they'll see enough scenarios and they don't have to ask things anymore, right? But it doesn't help because business changes. You got new stuff all the time coming up. So there are different situations. You get the same type of questions again. And even if this would work, it would be like a super inefficient way to do it, right? To just kind of put somebody in and say, hey, just kind of observe what happens and learn through sort of osmosis and pick up things and so on. And kind of hope that they'll be organized, even that they'll be organized enough to make notes of every little thing that they learned this day and kind of keep an inventory. It's just not going to happen, right? So basically, it will not stop. And then there's the flip side, right? Like when they do start making decisions, unfortunately, sometimes they will get it wrong, right? They'll make the refund in the wrong way. They'll respond in the wrong tone. They will make a wrong inventory order. They'll just make mistakes, right? Or they don't do it exactly how you would have done it or how you thought that they will do it. To you, it was obvious, but to them, it wasn't. They did it differently. And now you're like, damn, I got to explain everything. Otherwise, they just, who knows what they'll do, right? Yeah, so you're again stuck. So either you're answering everything and it's sucking up a lot of your time and you're kind of stuck micromanaging in a way, or you don't answer, right? And you just say, just do it, I trust you, but then mistakes happen, right? And then sometimes they're really annoying and painful mistakes, right? So most people think that this is a people problem, right? Oh, I can't find good people. It was a bad hire, or they didn't show initiative, or, they can't think for themselves. Why can't I just find people who, care about the business as much as I do? I'm the only one who can do it, or I do it the best. Nobody else cares as much as me. All this sort of nonsense, right? But here's actually what I've learned, right? It's not a people problem. It's a systems problem. And that's very good news for you. Because if it would be a people problem and you never can find good people, well, you'd be kind of stuck, right? But really, it's a systems problem. And we're going to address this in this video. So basically, every question is actually, it's a diagnosis, right? Whenever a team member comes to you or an employee comes to you and they're asking you something, how to do, how to execute on a task, or maybe they did it, now they're asking you for feedback, or maybe they're just completely unsure what you meant by something and that sort of stuff. So every question like this that you get, it's telling you exactly where your systems are incomplete, right? Because your business should be systemized. You should have standard procedures. You should have process maps. You should have everything laid out for them to be able to make decisions and also know exactly how to do everything that needs to be in a business. And I mean everything, right? So every question that comes up, right? So you probably have some type of systems and SOPs, at least you've probably written down at some point. And, if people still come to you with questions, it just reveals, okay, well, here's still where the gap exists. So somebody comes with a question. All right, great. I'll make sure that, we systemize that part as well. So the next time, the next person doesn't have to come with this question. That's it. It's literally just pointing you in the direction where you still need to improve your business, right? So there's no need to get frustrated. It's like, they keep coming to me with questions. I can never get like my strategy work done. I'm just getting pulled in the weeds. They can't do it on their own. They always need me, blah, 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 right? No, that's all like nonsense. Like you just need to create better systems. If you're stuck answering a bunch of questions every day from your employees and you're getting frustrated, you're really thinking about it completely the wrong way. Once you start seeing it as a systems problem, it will like you won't be so frustrated anymore because it will just be pointing you in the direction how you can improve your business. So anyway, let's say somebody asks you, hey, can I approve this $50 refund? You shouldn't go in there and say like, "Ooh, what's the product? Like, who's the customer? What's their purchase history? Is it a good customer? Like, what happened exactly? Why do they want a refund?" And then when you get all the facts, you'll be like, actually, yeah, maybe, yeah, you know what? Let's approve the refund, and but only because blah blah blah, right? And you didn't really do anything, right? Like you're just training people to bring you more problems next time because you're kind of like the problem solver, right? What you should actually do is be like, oh, okay, they're asking me, should they approve this refund? That means we don't have a clear enough process for this type of situation. So the refund SOP or the refund process map is missing some threshold rules or something, right? Like whatever the question was, whatever made your team member confused about it or unclear, well, that's what it's missing, right? So you fix the system and the question stops forever. So you don't go and answer them. You'll be like, all right, cool, let's note this down. And then I'll create a system around it. And then they can use the system, and then those questions should disappear. And if they don't, okay, you go through another iteration and so on and so on. Now, obviously, in the moment when it's happening, you'll probably be tempted to just jump in and, give them the answer and the question and so on, because now you're thinking about it anyway, right? Like somebody's pinging you on Slack, or maybe they're making you like a short Loom video. You're probably not going to ignore it, so you're going to watch it. Might as well answer at this point. But you got to keep track of what's happening, because most people, they'll be answering, and then as you're answering, you're probably thinking like, damn, I should like document this, right? But then like the next thing happens and the next thing happens, and you never really get back to it until like 3 days later, you got the same question. You're like, wow, I should have documented it. I didn't do it, and blah, blah, blah. So basically, when you get a question like this, they're not being annoying. They're telling you, hey, I don't know the rules here. You didn't tell me what the rules specifically are, right? And you might think like, well, I told you 100 times. Well, it's not enough. The fact that they're asking you is not their problem. It's the system's problem, it's your business problem, and ultimately it's your responsibility, right? So once you start seeing it from this perspective, that like, okay, if they have an issue, it's my problem. I should have created a better system for it so that they can't possibly have a question other than just being a very neglectful employee who just doesn't, care about the systems and the processes and never check anything. But I mean, there's not a lot of those type of people, right? Like it's an unrealistic scenario. So you can't really blame it on the person. So, if your refund SOP in this example will say, hey, approve anything under $75 automatically, escalate anything over, and escalate to the appropriate person, and then that person would have their own, system for like how to handle escalations, then, they would never ask. They would just do it. So that means, okay, you don't have it. So there's no need to get frustrated. So the question isn't, how do I get my team to stop asking, but what gap in my documentation is this question revealing? That's how you should be asking yourself. And this is how you ultimately are taking the highest degree of ownership over your business and your systems, rather than blaming, bad people, or people love to blame agencies. No, it's like just your systems are bad, right? So anyway, instead of getting frustrated at the questions, we're going to use them, because every question becomes a signal. They become like a little red flag that says, hey, this part of your business needs documentation. And we're going to capture those signals in something that I call the systems gap tracker. So, that's the thing that I wanted to get to. You don't want to just, sit there frustrated, knowing that like I should document this and then answer anyway and then move on. No, you're going to start noting down everything that happens every time it happens, right? So basically a question comes in, somebody in Slack asks you a question or whatever, permission, doesn't really matter, like some type of question, it's always going to be systems related. Like you should never answer it the one time and move on, because I promise you it will happen again. If not the exact same question, then something very related, right? So question comes in, you log it into the systems gap tracker, which, it's revealing your system gaps. You answer and you record a Loom. Typically, it's way easier for you as the owner to just quickly record a Loom. And, that's where you can then hand over the work to document the system to whoever's responsible for that system overall, right? So let's say people are asking you about refunds or customer service something, then, well, somebody in your business should be responsible overall for your customer service systems, right? So it shouldn't be you. Maybe it still is you, right? That just means, okay, you need to increase your revenue so you can hire more people and delegate more effectively and so on. But let's say, you already have somebody who's helping you. Well, that means if they're responsible for it, then they should be the person who now takes your Loom video and puts in all the work to make sure that like the new knowledge that you just gave them is incorporated inside of the system, right? So you don't actually sit down there and like start moving around, flowcharts and process maps and writing down SOPs. That would be a waste of your time, because anybody else can do it and should do it, as long as you have, clear hierarchy and responsibilities inside your business. So the process owner updates the SOP, basically the same thing. They'll take your Loom and they'll add the logic to the documentation. And the question is never ask again. That's it. And if it is ask again, then again, it's not because, the person is dumb or like, I don't know, there's something wrong with them. It's just, okay, it needs more documentation. And maybe you thought like, well, but I made a Loom video, like I explained it all. Well, maybe, it needs to be explained in a different way as well, right? Maybe you need to explain it from 3 different perspectives so that there's no way that somebody wouldn't know what to do. So anyway, that's it. You're going to document the question, you're going to record it in Loom, then you're going to hand it off to whoever is responsible for that system, and they are going to update the processes and the SOPs. So I will show you my version of the systems gap tracker. There's actually a couple of different ways how you can do it. It's very simple. You don't want to overcomplicate this. But I will also show you a company mind map, which will put all of this into context, right? So let me just open up the mind map. So here's a simple example. This would be like an example for an e-commerce business, right? If you have a different type of business, it doesn't really matter. The point is you want to create a structure, a mind map, a blueprint, a visual blueprint of your entire business, broken down into departments and teams and processes and systems and so on, so that when things start happening, you know in which department, in which branch they belong, right? And this is how it looks like. So basically here, you got your company, and then you got your core departments. In this example, I'll just like close it down. That's the beauty of the mind map. You can just, collapse it or expand it. So this would be like your level 1. So this is company mind map. Let's say here you would put your company name, and then you got your growth, sales channels, product, operation, leadership. Now, maybe you see your core department differently. Maybe you want to have a department for HR, and that would be like your separate department. In this example, I just have it under leadership. I have here team, finances, strategy, right? But maybe you see it differently. Maybe you're like, no, finances are a separate department. Okay, fine. That's not going to be a video about the company map. The point is, this company map gives you good context to like what's happening in the business and which processes need improving. Because, for example, let's say we were talking about the customer service, right? So that would be under operations. You got here customer service, support tickets, for example. This company mind map has like a lot of different functions and use cases, but one simple one is to start simply documenting where your presence as the owner is still needed. Like, where are you still the bottleneck, right? So in this example, let's say you're getting questions about refunds and, other types of support tickets. Then you could simply take a little marker and, you can use this and create a mind map in so many different mind mapping tools out there. Like I recommend Miro, but you can use any whiteboarding tool really out there. But basically, you could just say, okay, support tickets, and I'm just going to mark it here a little bit. That's, let's say, yellow. Because, you have somebody doing it, but that person still keeps coming back to you with the questions, so they're not really independent. So that area of the business is yellow and needs to be improved, right? And then eventually you're going to have like everything scored like this. Again, I'm not going to make like a super long section in this video on the company mind map, but that's one way how you should visualize it, create this, and then you start ranking or, color coding all the different branches and like systems in your business to see, okay, which ones are still problematic, right? That's basically it. Let's say you'd be the only person who can do support, then you would just put a red box here. And like it means, okay, this needs to be delegated and so on. And if it's green, that means nobody ever has to come to me to ask anything. I got the systems down. It's all documented. Every question they need is going to be answered by the systems or somebody else, but not me, right? Like I got other people who are going to manage it. So basically that's the company mind map and a simple like traffic system. Now, but let's talk about really what I wanted to talk about, which is the systems gap tracker, right? So it's a simple sheet. I will link like all this below the video, but basically you can create a simple sheet like that where you're just going to pop in all the questions that come to you throughout the week, right? And you just track them. And I wouldn't even, react to them on a daily basis or like in the moment as they come. If you feel like you need to answer the questions and you know your business better than I do, I'm just making a video. I don't know your business, right? But if you can wait, then I would wait with it. And I would train my team to not come with questions to me during the day, right? Like don't just like pop into Slack and say, hey, here's what I'm working on. I'm not sure what to do here. Can you tell me what, right? Because now they're interrupting your flow. What they should do is like also use the systems gap tracker and pop in the question here, right? So your team should also understand when they have a question about, whatever it is that they're working on, it's usually going to be like 99% of the time is going to be a systems gap, which means they should come here and they should say something like, hey, should I approve this $50 refund? And then explain a little bit what happened, right? And that way you start collecting all the gaps in your systems. And then let's say once a week you go in there, even if you give them the answer right there, somebody comes, let's say they do come in Slack and they're like, hey, what do I do with this refund? And you tell them what, right? And then you tell them, hey, put it in the systems gap tracker because I want to make a system around it, or I want to improve the systems around it. And then when you have the time, or maybe at the end of each day, you could do that depending on how many questions you get, right? If you get like a bunch of questions every day, then you might want to do this daily at the beginning. So you start documenting more and more and more, because really that's your main task, I think, as a business owner, to create the systems, to build a machine that's going to, that is your business, rather than being stuck in the weeds. But let's say you get a lot of questions on a daily basis. Well, then you would just like clean it up on a daily basis, right? Like if you get like 10 questions, you don't want to like let them collect and, pile up until you have like 40 of them and you don't remember like what exactly happened, right? But on a daily basis, maybe at the end of the day, because it doesn't really require like a fresh, it's not like a very intensive mental labor on your part, right? Like you don't want to do this in the morning, is what I'm saying, because you're going to be jumping from different question to different question. Like your mind's going to be a little bit all over the place, but it's fine if you don't need to like, you don't need the deep focus. That's what I'm trying to say, right? If you're working on some strategy or like, launching a new marketing channel, something like that, you need deep focus for a few hours. You want to do that part in the morning. And then maybe at the end of the day, you do this and you sit down and you just record Loom videos, right? And you would open up your, let's say, your customer process or whatever it is that you're working on, and you should have like a systems inventory. So for example, let's say, can I find here the customer? If not, I'm just gonna pick a different support. Okay, so let's say customer support. Okay, so we have here customer support, and here you have your process maps. I'm not gonna go into detail and zoom in and so on, but again, like I'll link stuff in the description. But you have flowcharts like this, right? And then for each of these steps, you would have an SOP, how exactly to do it. But however your systems look like right now, you would open that up and you'd be like, right, where do I have a gap here so that the person didn't know what to do for this refund? And you'd be like, oh, here I'm missing a branch, or I'm missing like, a fork in the road. Like, okay, what if the refund is over $50 or under $50? Or maybe it's over 200, whatever it is, right? Or maybe it's about, I don't know, just an expense. Maybe they're asking you, hey, I found a good tool. Should we sign up? It's like $30 a month. Maybe you're like, well, I don't care. If you think it's a good idea and you're responsible for that department or systems, just do it, right? If it's under $30. If it's like, 400, then maybe ask me. But if it's like 30 a month, then just do it, right? Well, if they keep coming to you and asking you, well, then again, you don't have this systemized. So basically, you would just open up your process maps and your SOPs, and you have a look through it, and you'd be like, okay, yep, I get it. I understand why they asked me this question. It's not in there. Now, if the question is answered in there and they still come and ask you, then it's a training problem, right? Then that's a different system, which is basically, okay, so why are people coming to me asking me about stuff that's all documented in my process maps and SOPs? Well, clearly they're not aware that it's all answered in there. Now, it could be an individual problem, which most likely it's not. It's more likely that, they just don't know that the answer was in there, or they're not used to looking for the answers in there. Either way, you need to train them and create an awareness around this. And these are like separate systems that I'm not going to go into that in this video. But basically, that's what you would do. And you would just like record a video. I wouldn't start moving these boxes around, and like creating new ones and like and making notes. That's going to take a lot more time than you just like creating a Loom video and explaining what should happen and say, hey, here we're missing a branch. Can you improve this and add an SOP? Or, add another section in the SOP that explains what to do in this scenario. And you would make a Loom video like this. You go back to your system tracker. You pop it in here, right? And then whoever's responsible for that system should take over from that point and go back and improve these process maps and flowcharts and so on. And that way, like you spend the minimum amount of time to create a long-term solution, right? So you're like really leveraging your time in both ways. Like you just record a video, you don't actually do the work, and then you don't just answer each time somebody asks, but you create a long-term permanent solution. Now, it's never permanent because things change and like, in a few months, you'll be recording it again because scenarios are different and that sort of stuff. But this is how you leverage your time. Now, if you have your entire business systemized, right, then you would just zoom out and you'd be like, all right, cool. I got all the processes here for, from ads to SEO to social media to processing returns, packaging, product development, even leadership, like meetings, how to hire new people, all this stuff. All right, cool, great. Then whenever you get a new questions, you just pop it in here. You would mark like, okay, what's the part? Is this marketing? Is this operations? Is this finance? Whatever they're asking about. And that's it. And you just keep improving your systems. So this is how you turn the questions into a tool to improve your business. So again, let's just repeat it. What you want to do is basically, I would just start immediately. You can start today. Create your systems gap tracker. You can use the sheet that I have. It's a simple sheet. It's got a few other tabs that I didn't really go in here, but you could create your weekly review and kind of like scoring and that sort of stuff and like, track. You could even turn this into KPIs and say, okay, every week I want to get the more and more of these systems documented. And every week I want to have more and more green here and not red and yellow on my process maps. But basically, you want to create a sheet like that. You want to log all the questions that you get, or ideally, again, tell the person when they come to Slack, right? And say, hey, what should I do here? You should, you're probably going to give them the answer, like I said, but then you should tell them, hey, open up the systems gap sheet and put this question in and explain the context so that later today, or maybe tomorrow when I have the time, I'll go through and I'll create a video for it so we can improve the systems, right? So just tell them to do it so you don't have to open the sheet, because otherwise you'll forget. And it's kind of their responsibility because they're asking about it and they're responsible for that part of the business. That's why they're asking about it, right? Then how do you want to prioritize? Well, again, in the sheet, I have a column for urgency. They could just mark it. Again, I would ask the person who's coming to judge. Is this very important, medium, or low, right? And then if you don't agree, once you're here and you have a look at them, okay, you can always reorder it or whatever. But yeah, that way you have some type of priority in case there's a bunch of them. But if you do this on a daily basis, you won't have that many every day. And then again, you'll record the loom, and then somebody else will update your SOPs. Again, if you don't have somebody who can do it, then you'll be doing it. But eventually you'll hire other people and they'll be able to do it. So that's it. In 30 days, your Slack volume will drop by 30%. And by that, I mean any question that you'll be getting will start dropping really fast. Depending on how many systems you already have in your business and how organized you are, it'll go faster, it'll go slower. It doesn't really matter. Within 3 months, you basically shouldn't be getting any questions anymore if you are creating systems and process maps. So that's basically it. Again, I'll leave the link in the description for all this stuff, the templates. I hope this helped. Start capturing the questions and turn those interruptions into improvements. And I'll see you in the next video.